Welcome to our topic about parameterizing array lists with Mario hazards and rewards. We have two array lists declared globally at the top of this class right here. And there's a distinct difference between the two of these as they're declared. I'm going to explain just a bit about the array list object in Java. It's a built-in class object in the Java language. It's considered a collection object. It will hold a list of items inside of it. An array list has some advantages over just a plain array object. One of those pretty big advantages is that it can be enlarged or downsized based on whatever you need in the program. When an array is declared, it has to be declared with a certain number of elements, and then it is stuck at that number. An array list is not that way. So we use array lists quite often, and they can hold objects, they can hold any type of data that you want. One thing about array lists is that they will, when they accept objects into them, they automatically convert that object, no matter what type of data it is, or even a primitive, if it takes primitives, and it could do that. It will convert those items that are put into it into what would be considered generic objects, and that way it allows itself to hold any different types of data. So you could have an array list that holds strings, booleans, robots, rocket ships, and boats if you wanted to. All those different types of objects and types of data. One array list could hold all those different things. Now arrays are not that way. Arrays have to be declared to hold or contain only a single type. So we use array lists pretty often when they're needed. Okay, so one of the problems with this, when the array list converts its objects that it takes into generic objects, is when we have to then pull those objects back out and use them for something. And we're going to do that in this example file. They have to be converted back to their original object to be able to be used and seen in that form. And that creates a bit of a problem. We're going to deal with that shortly. But that creates a little bit of a problem. So one of the things that has come along in Java and some other languages is that it's like C#. An array list can be what's called parameterized and given a specific single data type that it will contain. And that will be a limitation on that array list, that it can only contain those types of items. If you try to put something else in there, it's not going to take it. So this little feature right here is what's called parameterization, and it takes an array list and changes it from accepting generic objects, just basic generic objects, and converts it to being a string version of an array list. Okay, now so we're declaring two of these things at the top of this file. One array list that's just a plain array list that will take any type of object. Everything that goes in there is going to be converted to a generic object, just a simple basic object, which is the ultimate basic class in the Java library. Okay, now the second array list is going to be parameterized to contain strings only. Now you have to use these brackets, these angle brackets, immediately after the declaration of the data type. In both cases here, not only is this array list in this case declared right here with the data type and the name of the variable, but it is also created here with the new keyword and using the constructor for an array list right here. So we got to tell it takes strings right here as well. Okay, so that's parameterization for an array list. That's the definition of it. Okay, now moving on through this thing, we are going to, of course, have to deal with the main method. That's where execution is going to start for this, and we're gonna explain what this is going to do at this point. Okay, if we drop down just a bit farther, this is where we're going to load the array lists. And we've got some items from the Mario game. I guess it's the kart game that involves some hazards and some rewards. Okay, so there's two array lists. One is for hazards, one is for rewards in Mario. So I'm sure you're more familiar with this than me, and you'll know these when you see them, probably a bunch of you. Okay, so right here we're adding the items. We're using the add method for array list, which we've done in another video and explained. But we're adding the items to the two different array lists, and we're doing that right here. This method is going to need to be called. You're going to have to call this method up here. I left that for you to do. There's a comment here telling you where to do it. That method just simply needs to be called. Doesn't even take any parameters. Okay, so that's something that'll go right here, and it's going to be just simply load items right there. Okay, all right, so that's set. Now the next thing that we're going to do is just plain print these items out, and all I want you to do at this point is to replace these quotes right here with a call to the correct method down below, the bottom two methods described in the class, and call the correct method, whether it is for rewards or it is for trying to pull out a hazard to output the item from one of the lists that is best described by this little line in each case here for each output statement. Okay, so I'm sure you'll be able to figure these out. This is probably the easiest part of this file for you to do. Okay, now one thing I'm going to explain is how to use these methods down at the bottom. Okay, now we've got two methods. The hazards are in the generic array list, and they are all these items here that are put into the hazards list are converted from strings, because a string is a very specific type of data, to the generic object type in order to be put into this generic array list for hazards. Okay, now that's done every time the .add method is used on the hazards array list, and that's every other one in this little group of statements. Okay, so this method right here, well, let's look at this. Okay, there's two methods here. It doesn't tell you if they're for the hazards or if they're for the rewards. Okay, display items v1 version 1 takes an integer. Display items v2 also takes an integer. This integer, this parameter right here that it wants, you have to feed it. You're going to have to feed it from the output statement when you call one of these methods to get either a hazard or a reward up here to output. You're going to have to feed it an index number, whichever one. When we put these into these array lists, this is going to be item 0 in the hazards array list. This will be item 1 in the hazards array list. This will be item 2, item 3, and so forth. In the rewards, this will be item 0. This will be item 1. Penguin's suit will be item 2, and so forth. There'll be 5 of them all together, up to 0 through 4. Okay, so this method right here is for getting elements out of the non-parameterized array list, which is going to be for hazards. Okay, and the way this works, it's got a little extra stuff in it. Okay, return, it's got a string right here. You see it has a string as the return type for this method. They both have that. Return non-parameterized, and then you're going to get the item out of hazards. Now it's going to return whichever element you want to get. So you're going to, of course, need to match the element with the right description. You're going to need to match the right element number here, starting with 0 and going up through 4 with the correct description. So we'll do one in a minute. Okay, so this right here I do want to talk about for a minute, or for just a moment. We're dealing with a generic array list right here in the array list that is contained in the variable called hazards. Okay, and this right here, this little piece of code right here is what's called a cast. C-A-S-T, a cast. And this is when you want to convert a data type of a variable or an object or an item to another type of data in Java. You put it in front of it. It's almost like a backwards method. You put the cast, the type of data that you want to cast to, in parentheses, in front of the item that you're going to cast from. Okay, so this right here is going to take this item right here that comes from this method, the hazards list dot get this element, whatever element it would be, and it might be piranha plant. Okay, but hazards in its generic array list form right here is only going to see this as a generic object. It won't print it out as a string. It will not find text in here. It just is going to say, oh, that's a generic object. And if you use that up here and you don't use the correct, well, first of all, it'll probably output an error. Okay, but if you didn't use the correct method call right here, based on if it was a hazard, okay, then you won't be casting it back to a string, and it won't output right here because the print line method only deals with strings. Okay, it's only going to use strings for output. It won't take just a generic object. Okay, so this string cast right here will convert this item that you get from here, okay, using the get method on the hazards generic array list. It will pull out a generic object from this item, from this array list, and it will convert it to a string. The Java system will remember what kind of item is in there, what kind of object is in that array list, but it will not allow you to get it unless you cast it. And so you have to know, as the programmer, you have to know what type of data that's supposed to be and that is. And you can cast it to whatever you want. If you had an array list of, let's say, I don't know, cars here, and you wanted to pull this out as a car, you'd have to, if you had a car object, you'd have to literally put the word car right here, C-A-R, to convert it, to cast it to a car. Our array list just contains strings, so we're going to stick with that. It's pretty simple. We don't need any extra files to complicate what we're learning here. Okay, then you've got the second method, display items v2, takes an integer as well, and it will simply return the item as it pulls it out, the string as it pulls it out from the rewards array list. Okay, remember, rewards up here got parameterized. The rewards array list was parameterized to take only strings, so the Java system remembers this. Okay, and all it needs to know is which item you want to get, and it automatically knows it's a string, and you can concatenate it with the concatenator operator here, the little plus symbol, with this string right prior to it. Parameterized. This is a parameterized item, and based on which item you're trying to pull out, it might be a speed flower, okay, or it might be a penguin suit, whichever one matches the correct description up here. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at that, I think, and let you work with this. I'm going to do one or two of these. Okay, let's do the first one, a South American carnivore. Now, what lives in South America? In this list, we know that it would be a piranha. Okay, and it is a meat eater, so we're going to go with this piranha plant, and this is item number 0. Let's not get in the way of this. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's item number 4. Okay, so right here, I'm going to put in the method call display items underscore v1, and I'm going to put the number 4 in there because I want element 4. Okay, from that array list. Okay, I'm going to try that and see if that runs. Okay, let's let it save up and run. I've got okay, and here we've got a South American carnivore, non-parameterized. piranha plant. That's the answer we want. I want those answers right there after those colons for every single one of these things. Okay, that'll get you 100 on this. Okay, that's it for this. I would do another one. Okay. Oh, well, let's do another one. Let's do one more. Buzzing around in the air. I believe that's going to be a bee mushroom. Now, is that a hazard or a reward? Let's see. It's a reward. Well, let's not do a reward. Let's do one of the hazards. Let's do chain chomp. Let's do chain chomp. And as I look through here, metal eating dentures. That sounds a lot like something that would be a chain chomp. So I'm going to go into this. Okay. Oh, I just did a hazard, didn't I? Ooh, I wanted to do I'm sorry, I wanted to do a reward so you could see how it works. All right, let's do wing cap. Okay. Wing cap. Flying off the top of your head. That looks like it right there. Okay, I'm going to go with that. And I'm going to say display items. I believe that's going to be 0. Okay. And now notice I'm getting an error here. Okay, that little red underline. That's because I haven't named the method correctly. I'm going to have to finish spelling the full name of the method, display items underscore v2. Okay. Now that'll pull out wing cap and put it right there because I'm asking for element 0. Okay. Now this is how it's working. It's just returning. It's just simply pulling out the item from the rewards array list. It does not need to cast it because we parameterized that up here when we created the array list. It's been told to only hold strings, and so it knows to automatically, it does that cast automatically. Okay. All right, so I'm going to run that little thing and see if it did me right. Okay. And there we go. Wing cap, it grabs it. Okay, so that's it. That's the lesson. We're in good shape. Nice job.